Okay. Rightio. So, on that note, welcome everyone to our toxic lives, which is this is actually a Sally inspired talk tonight, and I'm going to introduce Sally in just a second. Thank you to everyone for putting up with about 10 minutes of technology dramas, but we got there in the end. We can hear and see Sally. You can hear and see me, which is awesome. That's cool.
Mm.
So, so let me just put this into perspective for you guys. So for those of you who don't know me, my name's Dani Catania, and my background is as a clinical dietitian, and I worked in the traditional dietetics practice for about 7 years. I specialized in sport, and I did lots of private practice. And one of the things that I saw a lot of was I saw that people, every probably second person that I saw through my clinic wasn't getting the results that they wanted. And I would kind of leave with them, with my nutrition plan, and I would cross my fingers and think, I hope that advice, works for them, but it often didn't. And I felt like I was always missing something. I was missing something, a piece of the puzzle. And one of those pieces of the puzzle has really come through environmental toxicity and environmental toxins. And for some health professionals who'll be maybe tuning in tonight or who might be watching the recording, thank you for making the time to learn about this, because some of us are very hyper aware of this case, but some of us aren't. And I definitely, 3 years ago, I was very ignorant, and I was like, toxins? Are they kidding? We live in this we live in this Western world. Who'd have ever, I just hadn't heard of. Wasn't aware, and I wasn't educated. So part of the reason why we're putting this free webinar on tonight is so that we can really give you the evidence and some substance, if you like, no pun intended, to have the ability to understand some of the most potent toxins in our environment, where they come from, how to avoid their impact, and put another piece of the puzzle of why your health or why your patient's health may not be quite where it's at. And to help me do this, I have invited a very, very special friend of mine she's just a saint. We just, like I said, we spent the last hour trying to sort out technical dramas. She's amazing. So Sally Hall is the future Dr. Sally Hall. Let me just say that. So she is currently finishing her PhD in reproductive biology at the University of Newcastle. She was inspired by her mentor, who is a leader in human fertility, and she's become very, very interested in this area of endocrine disruptors. So these are toxins that impact, or in some way, how our hormonal systems function. And in particular, the way that those, and for Sally, it's her real interest is where endocrine disruptors have an impact on infertility, and what we can do to naturally improve fertility. Her desire is to educate others about these chemicals, with the hope that being more aware of them, we can create a more healthier future for ourselves, and of course, really save this planet by having healthy babies and making healthy humans. So I actually have taken Sally's advice. I should actually let you know I am 13 weeks pregnant. When Sally and I were first talking, I was starting to get a little worried, because it was almost coming up to the 3 months mark. And I remember Sally saying, if you've been trying for longer than 3 months, might be something to look at. But luckily it was at the third month, and yeah, anyway, so more on that story later. But I'm very, very excited to have Sally with us. So thank you again, Sally, for making the time.
Thank you, Dani. Thank you.
So I'm
very happy to be here. Very excited to share all of it.
And this all started because you reached out to me a couple of months back, and we've kind of started a bit of a love affair between us, because, we are both science nerds. In fact, I thought I was really nerdy. Like, you take it to a whole new level, my friend. But it's such an important thing to be talking about. So thank you everyone for making the time on a busy Thursday evening from wherever you're tuning in. So let me see if I can get these slides up. Fingers crossed. Okay. Can everyone just give me a yes if they can see the slides? Okay, cool. And Sally, you can see them?
Yep, I can see them.
Yep, good, and hear me. That's awesome. All right, great. We're in business.
Yeah.
All right, so Sally and I are going to co-present this tonight together. So let's have a chat about some of the ways that endocrine disruptors work. So Sally, I might lead this bit, and then I'll get you in for we'll alternate between the top 12, if that's okay with you.
Yep, perfect.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. So basically, we know, the type of toxins that we're talking about, like I said, are endocrine disruptors, and we know that they can interfere in a number of ways. So they can increase the production of certain hormones, they can decrease the production of others, they can imitate hormones, they can turn one hormone into another, they can interfere with hormone signaling. So of course, that's the way that our cells recognize instructions from hormones. They can tell cells to die prematurely. They may even compete with essential nutrients. They can bind to essential hormones, and they can accumulate in organs that produce hormones. So altogether, that's obviously pretty nasty stuff. So what Sally and I want to do tonight is we want to give you our guide to 12 of the worst of the hormone disruptors, how they do their dirty deeds, and some tips on how to avoid them. So I'll kick us off with BPA. So I'm sure that most of you have heard of or would be familiar with bisphenol A or BPA. And you would have seen it on, babies' bottles. You would have seen it on drink bottles. You would have, and advertising that as BPA free. And there's good reason for that. And BPA is an imitator, and they say that imitation is the best form of flattery, but not when it's in our body. And so BPA has been known to imitate the sex hormone estrogen. And unfortunately, this synthetic hormone has been linked with everything from breast and other cancers to reproductive problems, obesity, early puberty, and heart disease. Now, I couldn't find the statistics for Australians, but we know that 93% of Americans, which I would assume that we're pretty much on par, have BPA levels in their bodies. So let's have a look at where they are and how to avoid BPA. So number one is go fresh instead of canned. So many food cans are lined with BPA, or at least research which companies don't use BPA or similar chemicals in their products. This was a really surprising one. Say no to receipts. Now, Sally, you taught me this one. Since thermal paper is often coated with BPA. So now the people that are most at risk are people that work as sales assistants, so people that are constantly touching and giving out receipts. And Sally, I might just get you to jump in here. There was a study, wasn't there, looking at sales assistants and their levels of BPA?
Yeah, it happened in the USA, and a study was conducted where they took bloods from sales assistants at the start of their shift, and then they took their bloods again 8 hours later at the end of their shift, and there was a significant increase in the levels of BPA in their bloodstream, which is scary.
That's really scary. So the easiest thing is, if you don't need the receipt, and think about other things that are printed, like things like flight. When you get flight tickets printed out, obviously you need those kind of things to get on the plane. But if you can get it on your phone, where you don't need to touch any of the printed materials, well, then that's even better. Plastics marked with PC, that stands for polycarbonate, or it's type number 7. So you'll see when you lift up, where you can see the recycling, code. So if it's number 7, it contains BPA. And don't just think about the water bottles that we drink from. This extends even into products that, or like packaging that certain maybe foods or products are contained in. So just being aware, especially depending on how long that product is lingering in that particular container, and also whether it's exposed. If it's something that needs to be heated, heat can often release more BPA into the product. So just remember that not all of those plastics contain BPA, but many do. So I'd rather be safe than sorry when it comes to, keeping BPA out of our system. So, and Sally, if I miss anything, just please jump in. So,
all right.
Awesome. So I will move on to, I'll hand over to you for this one.
Cool. Alrighty. So this one's dioxins, and dioxins are sort of a name for quite a few different chemicals. They're found typically during industrial processing, with chlorine and bromine being burned and coming together in the presence of oxygen and carbon. They're found in PVC, so polyvinyl chloride plastic. So normally you think of that as PVC tubing, and that's the number 3. So you'll see that on plastics with that triangle and the number 3. It's formed in the manufacture of pesticides, and it's becoming clearer and clearer that pesticides are quite harmful, not only to pests, but to us as well. And it's found in triclosan. And triclosan's like a dirty chemical for me, because it's actually found in bacterial hand gel. And we use bacterial hand gel today like it's going out of style. So it's really interesting that that's where it is, and it's important to be aware of. You'll also find dioxins when you're in front of a fire, at power plants and sewage. They disrupt the delicate ways that both male and female sex hormone signaling occurs in the body, and that's why I'm particularly interested in them in the field that I'm in. And research has shown that exposure to low levels of dioxin in the womb and early in life can prematurely affect sperm quality and lower the sperm count in men during their prime reproductive years, and they may also cause birth defects. So dioxins are very long-lived in our bodies. Dioxins used to be more common a few years ago than they are today, but because they have such a long half-life in our body, although we might not be exposed to them at the levels that we used to be, they're still in our system. So they build up in the body and in the food chain, and they're powerful carcinogens, so they're cancer-causing, and they can also affect our immune system and our reproductive system. So how can we avoid dioxins? It is really tricky to avoid them because they're in manufacturing areas. They're in the air that we breathe. It's due to the ongoing industrial release of dioxins. It's in our food supply, which is quite difficult to avoid. But products that, such as meat, fish, eggs, and butter, they're most likely to be contaminated. So you can cut down your exposure on them by eating fewer animal products. You can also avoid the PVC plastics. So turn whether it's a water bottle or something else, just turn it upside down, have a look at what number is on it, and you can rest assured that if it's number 3, you don't want it in your house. And also avoid products such as the triclosan hand gels and toothpaste.
Awesome. Thanks, Sally. I just keep thinking about things that I might have missed in my household, and I'm sure everyone who's on the call is doing the same. I'm just going to double check. I saw some. Can everyone still hear Sally? Just give me a yes if you can still hear Sally. I just had one person say they couldn't hear you. Yep. Okay. All good. Okay. All good, Sandra. Perfect. Oh, good. Okay. Just thought I'd double check. Awesome, guys. Can you just give me a yes if this is really interesting, if this is something that you enjoy learning about? Love it. Fantastic. Awesome. I thought you might like it. Yes, Nat. Love it. Cool. Awesome, guys. Thank you for your feedback. That's really good to know that we're on track. So now, Sally, I'll get your help with this one as well, because I think this is something that this is your sort of specialty area. So, but I'll have a crack at it. So, so let's talk about atrazine. So atrazine is an example of what happens when you introduce highly toxic chemicals into nature and then turn your back on them. So there was basically the example of where male frogs turned into female frogs from their exposure to this chemical. researchers found that exposure even to low levels of it's used in herbicides. So the common household terms or names you may have heard of is things like Roundup and Zero. They're the ones that I recognized when I was looking into this. So unfortunately, atrazine is widely used in the States. If you're listening in from the States, it's widely used on corn crops. And in Australia, it's sprayed on maize, canola, canola that's TT resistant. That was one of the things that I learned. Sorghum, sugarcane, and potatoes, just to list a few. And I guess atrazine is just one example of the plethora of dangerous chemicals that are found in herbicides and pesticides. And we will get to a list of the sort of the safer fruits and vegetables versus the ones to probably choose organic. So the problem as well is that it's got a long half-life, and so it's pretty pervasive in drinking water. And if you think about it, like, I think back to even just a few years ago spraying Roundup on my backyard and grass because I didn't know any better. And then I think we water our gardens. That water runs off into drain waters, and then we start polluting our system. So it's pretty nasty when you start thinking about it. Atrazine has been linked to breast tumours, delayed puberty, and prostate inflammation in animals. And there's been some research that has been linked to prostate cancer in men. Sally, did you want to add anything more on that one?
I was just going to share that with the feminization of male frogs, if that sounds a bit confusing, what that means is when we do have that runoff, say from the soil or from in our backyards or from big crops, what happens is that's all pooled into river systems and streams. And certainly in the US, there was cases where crocodiles were actually changing their sex as a result of all the, not only atrazine, but other hormone disruptors that are mimicking estrogen. And so then there's this huge change in dynamic in terms of percentage of male and female animals, which has all these other ramifications as well. And so when we get this water back into our system treated, but the things that remain are these toxins such as heavy metals and pesticides such as atrazine. So important.
Great ad, Sally. And so the kind of the tips that we have is, I mean, just on that, you just mentioned that it can still be present in tap water. So it is really important. Get yourself a water filter that will remove atrazine. And, the other thing is, and we've got a list coming up, and that is to select, if you can buy organic produce, great, but we do realise that some of us live in areas, even in metropolitan areas, there can be limited or less access to organic produce. So there's a list of, if you can't have access to organic produce, which are the better fruit and veggies to choose to limit your residue, that have lower pesticide residues. So more on that later. Any other tips, Sally, from your point of view?
This one's tricky. I guess if you're looking at pesticides, full stop, you can have a look at the back of them, and there are certain ones like atrazine that stand out. So if you were looking at some sort of pesticide alternative, I know that there are safer ones, or you can just start pulling weeds.
Yeah, that's very true. Or hot water works wonders as well on weeds. So
yeah, there you go.
Awesome, great tip. So I'm handing over to you for phthalates.
All right, Farlows is probably my favourite, and it's my favourite because we've actually done some studies in our research lab here, and they surround testicular tumours. So here it shares with you that this phthalate is also related to a signal that causes programmed cell death in our bodies. So normally we have around 50 billion cells in our body that will die and slop off and go into processing, and then we'll have generation of new cells. So studies have shown that phthalates are in fact triggering programmed cell death in the body, which is bad news. And in particular, it's happening in men in cases of testicular cancer. And we have actually been involved in this research, which has been really exciting. So what happens during this process is the testicular cells are actually dying earlier than they should, and then we're getting atrophy and we're getting the tumour. So if that's not scary enough for the men out there, studies have shown that phthalates are also related to hormone changes, drops in sperm count, less mobile sperm, and birth defects in the male reproductive system, obesity, diabetes, and thyroid irregularities. So this chemical, interestingly, is also the new car smell that you smell when you get into a car. And what happens, especially when we have our cars in the hot air or hot sun during the day, you get in and you can feel the heat, and you can almost feel the plastic in the air, and that's the phthalates that are in the air, which is a bit scary. And again, this one's also found in that PVC piping. So any plastics that you see the PVC logo on it, you know that there's phthalates in that plastic. So best to get rid of those. And they are linked to your tap water as well. All right, so how to avoid them? Certainly a good place to start is looking at all of your food containers in your kitchen and seeing what plastic rating they are. If they're a 2, a 4, or a 5, they're okay, but you want to avoid the ones that are labeled 3 or 7 or 1. So children's toys as well, some of them do contain phthalates, and when you think about a child having that in their mouth, sucking on that plastic, that's a bit of a concern. And Glad wrap or plastic wrap is also made from PVC. So if we think about microwaving that, that's probably not a great option for our health, given that we're going to eat the food that's underneath that plastic wrap. There are quite a few cosmetics and personal care products that also contain phthalates. So makeup in particular is a big one. So you can, look into the labels quite closely and try and find things that are safer. Anything that says fragrance is no good, because chances are it's a phthalate derivative, so you want to avoid that one. There are also, one thing that I shared with Dani that I remember she was quite surprised with, is that a lot of vitamins and supplements that you can get on the chemist shelf are actually coated with phthalate as the coating for when we digest it, which is quite alarming because it's actually not written on the ingredients list because it's not an active ingredient. So it's really tricky to try and determine which ones are phthalate free and which ones aren't. But I guess the best thing you can do is do your due diligence and check with the pharmacist or the drug company to see whether or not they do have that enteric coating.
Great one, Sally. And just on that, I know that there'll be a few people listening in who love some of the nutritional cleansing products that we've fallen in love with as well. And we did our due diligence on this one and made sure that the company does the right thing. And there are no phthalates used in any of the tablet and pill wrapping, which is really important. So, which is really good. So. Yeah,
that was the first thing I checked for me, and I skipped over all the containers, and I was like, oh, yep, okay, they're all right.
Awesome. It's so good. So over to me. So now, Sally, I'll get your help with this one as well, because some of these are less familiar to me. And so the number 5 one is perchlorate. So this perchlorate is actually a component in rocket fuel, and it contaminates much of our produce and our milk as well, according to some of the EWG and environmental testing data. So when perchlorate gets into your body, it competes with iodine, which is obviously, most of us will know it's an essential nutrient. And the thyroid gland needs this to make thyroid hormones. Basically, this means if you ingest too much of this substance perchlorate, you can end up altering your thyroid hormone balance. And some of you may be connecting, some thyroid issues that you've either heard of or may know someone with. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's some sort of link with this potential substance. This is because it's important that these hormones that obviously are produced from iodine in the thyroid are there to regulate metabolism in adults, and they're also really important for proper brain and organ development in infants and young children. So, Sally, did you want to add anything to that one?
Not really. There's not too much more than with that one. Fortunately, it's not in our food per se, but it is in our drinking water, so we do need to be aware of that.
Mm-hmm. So and just on that, so given that it is in our drinking water, so again, if you haven't got the message, get a filtered water bottle, or filter your water with an in sync type of a system, and do your homework. So we're giving you all of the chemicals to be aware of, and it's up to you to do your homework and choose, which one. As for food, it is pretty much impossible to avoid perchlorate, but you can make sure, or you can at least reduce the potential effects by making sure that you're getting enough iodine in your diet. And iodized salt is probably the easiest way, because if you're adding a little bit of salt, say if you're boiling pasta, or you might be making a salad sandwich or whatever it is, iodized salt can be a really great way of making sure that you're having iodine. And also bread is now, so standard bread, not organic types, standard breads are now made with iodized salt as a law. And so if you're having, 1 or 2 pieces of bread each day, the funny thing is most of, there's a lot of like this low carb thing. So a lot of people are cutting bread out and cutting salt out. So, but remember, those 2 things are really important to get our iodine in. A couple of decades ago, when milk fats used to be cleaned with an iodine type of a solution, we used to get iodine through our milk as a kind of side. It was quite accidental, but it was quite good for us. Now milk fats tend to use things like chlorinated bleaches to clean, and we're missing out on that source of iodine. The other source is things like seaweed, but I know that not, so if you love eating, sushi and seaweed, well, that's great, but some of you may not. And so, so there's some of our recommendations. Sal, did you want to add anything to that?
Nope, that's all good.
Cool. Over to you.
Ooh, okay, fire retardant.
I know this is a favorite.
So, yeah. All right. So fire retardants or flame retardants are, they're almost everywhere in your household. They're in your carpets, they're in the walls, they're in our furnishings and everything. We used to build furniture from hand and create couches or lounges with horsehair and hessian. And today, everything has got flame retardants in it, which you would think would be protective and not catch on fire, but they actually do the exact opposite. So it's strange how they were developed and implemented into Western society. But I digress. So let me just have a look at this writing here. So there's a little story about polar bears and breast milk here. And in 1999, Swedish scientists that were studying women's breast milk actually discovered that the milk contained flame retardant. And the levels have been doubling every year since 1972. So these are very, very persistent in our environment. Common ones that you might have heard of is polybrominated diphenyl ethers, BPDEs, and they have been found in people and in wildlife around the globe. And it's quite extraordinary to think that they're even found in polar bears. That's how pervasive and persistent flame retardants are. So the issue with these chemicals is they can imitate thyroid hormones in our body, similar to what we've just talked about, and that obviously disrupts their activity, which causes the whole plethora of health issues. Some of those can be neurological, so leading to lower IQ. You can also have other significant health effects as well. So several PBDs have now been phased out, but when one thing's phased out, something else comes along to take its place. And so flame retardants certainly haven't gone away completely, and we need to be aware of that. Again, they are incredibly persistent, so although they might not be used as prevalently as they were, they're still in our environment, still in our furnishing, so we want to still be here for a while. Antimony is just a little one that Dani and I were talking about just for a few seconds earlier today, which is actually found in the type 1 plastic, funnily enough, and that is in itself a flame retardant. And another acronym, THCP, is flame retardant in itself, which we don't really need to go into too much detail. All right, so how to avoid them? Really difficult unless you're an Eskimo or a Mennonite or an Amish person, because they're everywhere. Even, you know, on the desk that I have in front of me, on the seat that I'm sitting on, they're everywhere. So the one thing that we can do is become aware of these chemicals and make a to phase them out by law, and Europe is fantastic for this. So rather than having chemicals developed without checking their safety, instead have them developed and have their safety tested before they go out to the market and expose us all with it. A few things that you can do personally is use a vacuum cleaner with a HEPA filter, and that'll cut down some of the dust in your environment that might be chemical laden, and also avoid reupholstering foam furniture. We can take care by replacing old carpet. So actually, not the carpet itself, but underneath the carpet, there is a padding, which is known to have PBDEs. So it's really important to be aware of it. And if you're a carpet refitter, that's not very good news for you. And finally, avoid the type 1 plastic.
Awesome, Sally. And I think there'll be a few people that are rethinking some of the things that that they have got in their house, and it's just really, it is so important just to know about these things. So am I still clear? Am I still okay? You can hear me okay still?
I can hear you. Yep.
Perfect. I just want to double check. So I'll take lead. So we all know that lead is a toxic chemical in our environment, and even so we know that lead harms almost every organ and system in the body, and it's been linked to a plethora of health effects. So things like permanent brain damage, lowered IQ, hearing loss, miscarriage, premature birth, increased blood pressure, kidney damage, and nervous system problems. So the list goes on. But few people realize that lead can actually disrupt our hormones as well. So in animals, lead has been found to lower sex hormone levels, and research has shown that lead can disrupt the hormone signaling that regulates the body's major stress system. So it's for those of for the scientists and the health professionals, you recognize this as the HPA axis. And so basically we know that our lifestyles and our, I suppose, our Western lives are already fairly stressful as it is. And so to have this contaminant as a proponent for us not being able to deal with stress, as well as we could, just, I've just got a slow connection. Can everyone still hear me and see me okay? Would you like to hide? No, I'll be fine.
Yep.
Is that it? Can still see me okay? Did I just close down the slides? Yeah, I did. That was not very smart. Yep. There we go. Okay, they're back. Can you see them now?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Sorry. It's been the night for it. So let's hang in there, internet phone, because that's how I'm running my internet at the moment. So basically, lead is found in Teflon, in Scotchgard, in microwave popcorn bags of all places, in food wrappers, in carpets, in the carpet waterproofing system, so to prevent stains and things. So if it's labelled as being, like stain proof, just be aware of that. And some children's toys. Sel, did you want to add anything to that, or have I covered it?
You pretty much covered it. I think that this last one is actually for our next chemical.
Possibly.
So I'll just see what comes up for the next one.
Maybe. I did feel a bit of a repeat, sorry. All right, so maybe hold that thought on that one. So how to avoid lead?
Yeah.
So keep your home clean and well maintained. So crumbling old paint is a source of lead exposure. So just be careful of how you're getting rid of it, especially for the home renovators out there or the DIY kind of experts. So just be really careful with that. A good water filter, again, can also reduce your exposure to lead in drinking water. Some lipsticks contain lead. So choose those based on natural ingredients. So obviously just look at the ingredients list, and yeah, you'll be safe. And if you need another reason to eat better, studies have also shown that children with healthy diets absorb less lead, and I'm sure the same applies to adults. So yeah, that's really important. So I think you may be right on that one, Sally. I think those last points may have applied to arsenic, and I'm going to blame my baby brain for that one. Sorry.
That's all right. It's not arsenic. I think it's going to be number 9 or number 10.
Okay.
But I'll let you know when it comes
up.
All
right, cool.
But arsenic, similar to lead, is a heavy metal. Most of us know this. So it is a toxin that lurks in our food and our drinking water. And if you eat enough of it, it will kill you outright. It is fatal. In smaller amounts, arsenic can also cause bladder, skin, and lung cancer. So we know most of these things about arsenic, but some facts that are less well known is that arsenic does in itself affect your hormones. So it is also an endocrine disruptor. It can interfere with normal hormone functioning in terms of glucocorticoid system that regulates our sugar and carbohydrate processing. It also disrupts this system in a way that's been linked to both weight gain and weight loss, protein wasting in the body, immunosuppression and immunoresistance, which leads to diabetes, and osteoporosis, growth retardation, and high blood pressure.
Awesome. Sorry.
That's all right. Right, so how can we avoid this one? Again, it comes down to water. That's the main area that we find arsenic in. So I'm not sure if many filters actually, I think they do. Yeah, there are filters that also protect against arsenic. So buying a water filter that specifies that it does that is really important.
Mm-hmm. I think it may be, is it mercury? I think there was one, anyway, I'm sure you'll jump out, because I think it was the waterproofing one. It's coming back to me now.
Yeah.
So mercury. So mercury.
It might be the last one.
Possibly the one, the waterproofing thing. Sorry, my bad. So mercury is naturally occurring, but it is a toxic metal. It gets into the air and the oceans primarily through the burning of coal. Eventually, it can end up on our plates in the form of mercury-contaminated seafood. And pregnant women are the most at risk from the toxic effects of mercury, since the metal is known to concentrate in the fetal brain and can interfere with brain development. Which is not an issue for me at the moment anyway, because I do not want to see seafood at all, which is very weird for me. But mercury is also, I'm safe. So mercury is also known to bind directly to one particular hormone that regulates our menstrual cycle. And speaking obviously to the girls on the call, and ovulation, and it can interfere with those normal signaling pathways. So in other words, hormones don't work very well when there's mercury kind of stuck to them. The metal can also play a role in diabetes, and since mercury has been shown to damage cells in the pancreas that produce insulin, which is obviously critical for the body's to be able to metabolize sugar. So, and I wonder if that may go back to, like, my own mum has type 1 diabetes, and that, I just think back to 50 years ago when she was diagnosed. Was there anything that may have been in her environment that led to that? So how to avoid our mercury? Well, for people who still want to eat seafood, sustainable seafood with lots of healthy fats, we know of those benefits, but without a side of toxic mercury, wild salmon and farm trout seem to be good choices. And if you're concerned that you're not eating enough of those particular, especially the deep sea fish. So the way that mercury works is it builds up depending on where that fish is in the food chain. So the larger fishes, so things like tuna and I think sharks, because they're at the end of their kind of fish food chains, they tend to have the highest levels of mercury. So you can actually have a look. If you go in Australia, if you go to this is off the top of my head, but I think it's food standards .gov.au, and you can look up mercury levels, and that will give you the low mercury seafood and the higher mercury seafood, so which one to avoid and be careful. So that's a really great resource. If you don't, if you choose not to have seafood or you dislike it, an omega-3 supplement can fill in those gaps, because it's really important to get those omega-3s in, so those long-chain fatty acids. But just make sure that whichever one you choose has been screened for heavy metals, which obviously includes mercury. For, again, the people that are loving nutritional cleansing and some of the products, the omega-3 supplement has been screened for heavy metals, and we can rest assured that, knowing that we're doing the right thing by our bodies. Anything else on mercury, Sal?
I was just thinking about my dad, who used to play with mercury in class, like with their hands, they would play with mercury. So I guess it just goes to show that in a generation you can see this huge change, because mercury, known to be really toxic, and we had no idea. It was in thermometers. We played with it because it's such a fascinating metal. It beads up on your hands. But you don't want to do that these days, because we know how dangerous it is.
Or even, do you remember the pink antibacterial solution that you used to get for cuts in the schoolyard? I remember getting pink, like on my knee, pink solution, and that contained mercury.
Yeah.
So we're all doomed.
There you go. Yeah.
You got pink stuff on your knee.
It just sings. Yeah, well, it sings a tale, because I'm sure that there's things that we discuss now, such as phthalates or something else, that we have no idea of their dangers, and in 20 years' time they'll be banned and you will never see them again. But we have them in close vicinity now, and we have no idea.
Yeah, I know. So moving on, I'll pass over to, I think this is the one that this is the non-stick stuff.
This is the one. Yep, cool. This is the one. So, AKA Teflon. Teflon was actually invented by accident. It just happened all of a sudden by mistake, which is the way science happens sometimes. So non-stick cookware, typically this is pans especially. It might be oven tins and things. They are so widespread and persistent now in our environment that 99% of Australians have fluorinated chemicals in our bodies. And an example of fluorinated chemicals is fluorotonic acid. It's a hard one.
I'm glad
you're quite a few different variables of these chemicals. I don't think anyway, we won't go there. But yeah, so in other words, it's got a really long half-life again. It's a notorious compound that is completely resistant to biodegradation, and that is what we see with a lot of these chemicals. So it won't break down in the environment, and we think that it won't break down ever, which is a huge claim to make. So what this means is the chemical, although banned decades and decades ago, is still showing up in our bodies, and it will for a really long time, apparently ever. And this is an issue because this exposure to these CFCs is linked to decreased sperm quality, low birth weight, kidney disease, thyroid disease, and high cholesterol, among a variety of other health issues. And scientists such as myself are still figuring out how these chemicals affect the body. And that's crazy because we don't even allow them now, but we still don't know the damage or the extent of the damage that they're causing. We have been able to look at animal studies, and we have seen that, yes, it certainly does have effects on the thyroid, and it affects sex hormones.
And I think you're right. I think this is where the Teflon and the Scotch Guard and all of that stuff comes into it.
Yeah. So definitely Teflon, Scotch Guard, microwave popcorn bags. Please don't microwave your popcorn in popcorn bags. They're so bad. Food wrappers, so fast food wrappers in particular often contain this, and you can see that they're quite slick. And carpet cleaning systems often contain them because, again, like Scotch Guarding and brands like that. And some carpets even are created to have that already in them. So if you spill something, you're able to wipe it up quickly. And although that's convenient, it's not so convenient if you know that it's causing low sperm quality and hormonal issues. So you weigh up what you think is best. So yeah, how to avoid them, avoid those things that I've just listed, and skip water-resistant coatings unless I'm not sure if there are any that are safe, but if you can find one, then use that alternative.
Mm-hmm. And more on that later. So now I've got a big word. I thought I palmed off all the big ones to you, but I got a doozy. So
Organophosphate.
Thank you. Pesticides.
Yep.
So Sal, I'll get you to chip in with this one as well if I miss anything. So from my research, neurotoxic organophosphate compounds that the Nazis actually produced in large quantities were luckily not used during World War II as chemical warfare. But after the war ended, American scientists actually used the same chemistry to develop a long line of pesticides that target the nervous system of insects. Despite many studies linking organophosphate exposure to things like effects on brain development, behavior, and fertility, they're unfortunately still among the more common pesticides that is in use today. A few of the many ways that organophosphates can affect the human body is that they can interfere with the way testosterone communicates with cells. It can lower testosterone and alter thyroid hormone levels as well. Did you want to add anything else to that, Sally?
It might be on the next page, but these include things that we might not realize, such as pest sprays that we spray insects within our house. So they are these pesticides, and they are harmful. And because they do exist for quite a while in our home, it's a really it's interesting to think about, especially if you've got young children or you've got dogs or little people around that might be putting their hands on the ground, or an animal that might be ingesting or licking something off the floor. So I certainly know that I made a switch to move away from any aerosol sprays that were for pesticides, because if you just keep your home clean, then in theory you shouldn't need them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I did forget to put that in. The other suggestions that I had about avoiding them were things like buying organic produce, and now there is the EWG Shopper's Guide to Pesticides in Produce, or we're going to give that to you at the end. So hang in there. So we want to either buy organic produce, or you can choose those fruit and vegetables that have the lowest pesticide residues compared to the others. So and like you said, Sally, looking at moving away from things like aerosols, and I think you also mentioned the 80% DEET in things like Aerogard and things like that.
Yeah, Aerogard and Bushmans and things like that. They're nasty. They're quite acidic on the skin, and obviously they're designed to be an insecticide to prevent mosquitoes and things. But the damage it causes to our skin probably outweighs, well, in theory, outweighs a mosquito bite. So moving away from that, there are quite a few different natural insect repellents that are available these days. So I would definitely recommend them over something that is going to cause neurological issues for the insect, because that's probably going to cause some issues for your health as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great tips. And I'll leave the last one for you. Shrunken testicles.
Woohoo! All right, Glycol Ethers. Yes, if there are any men listening, I hope you're paying full attention. So shrunken testicles is something that can happen to rats who are exposed to glycol ethers. So they're commonly found in paint, solvents, brake fluid, and unfortunately, ladies, cosmetics. So if this worries you, it should, because the European Union says that some of these chemicals may damage fertility and even damage your unborn child. The studies have linked people that actually do painting for a living have exposure to certain glycols in their blood, which causes abnormalities in their blood and is linked to lower sperm count. And children who have been exposed to glycol ethers from paint in their bedrooms have substantially more asthma and allergies, which is quite alarming. Yeah. All right, how do we avoid them? All right, so there's products that contain ingredients that are called butox ethanol and methoxydiglycol. And I guess that's the tricky part of a lot of these chemicals is they're a big name that you're not familiar with. Even for me, I have to think back and I recall all of them. So I guess if you can make a little list of these chemicals and write them down, you know that they're going to be in paints and that sort of industrial area. You can just make a note to find ones that advertise that they're a safer paint or a safer product.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, Sally, on that note, I'm just going to shut this down so that we can just say our final, goodbye, because we are on time. And I just wanted to offer these guys who have either tuned in live or for those guys who might be listening to the recording. I'm just going to see if this link works. No, it hasn't. Just bear with me 1 second. So Sally and I have put together, for some of you who might be wishing that you took notes for this session, and maybe you are in transit or you were busy doing whatever you needed to do, we've created a free guide basically to those chemicals that we talked about today. And also some of those, we've got a list of those low pesticide or residue type of fruit and vegetables. So I'm just going to see if this link will work. Bear with me. It is through ClickFunnels because I'm a dinosaur and I'm still getting used to this technology. But the link is there, and so you can download that guide for free. Sally and I are also, just while we have you for the last 60 seconds, Sally and I are very, as you can hear, we're very passionate about this area of science and research. Sally is the brains behind the whole operation, and I'm not even the pretty face. So what we've done is we're combining our combined knowledge. So my knowledge is around food additives, preservatives, and the food kind of side of things. Sally's area of expertise is the environmental and those kind of toxins, as you heard her being very passionate on this call tonight. And so what we're putting together is in July, we're running our first 4-week program. We will actually have access to both Sally and myself. We'll be able to make actual recommendations on some because I know some of you will have questions around the brands. You know, what brands do you recommend? Is there certain brands that we should avoid or choose more of, choose less of? So some tips around that. I know both Sally and I have got some really great recommendations for you. And so we're offering you guys as the early bird. So it's normally $197 to do the 4-week program with us. But we are offering it to you for $97. So if you would like to do it, if you click through on that link, you can say, no, I just want the guide. Or if you do want to be part of that program where you get I know tonight was probably a bit frustrating because we really just skimmed the surface. We just touched on a couple of things, but just wait until you hear Sally talk about some of the stuff. Like, she is just an encyclopedia of chemicals, where they're found, how to avoid them. And so there's a lot of stuff that's coming up for you guys. So I just want to throw to you guys, for those that have hung in there for the hour, thank you so much. We hope it's been valuable. I'm just going to have a look at some of the questions that have come through. I love science, says Suzanne.
Yay.
This has been amazing.
Me too.
Faces. Awesome. Perfect. Thanks, Melissa, for letting us know.
Cool.
Apparently, Natalie says, no questions, but I have a great baby glow. Thank you very much, Natalie. I don't feel like it, but might be just the lighting. Thank you so much. Guys, we hope, just give us a yes. And Sally, you should be able to see this as well. If you just drop down the questions box, you should be able to see this come through. So guys, if you'd like to just maybe share one thing that you learned, or if you enjoyed this, if this was really valuable, we would love to hear it, because sometimes it's hard talking to ourselves in front of a computer. So Kate is asking, do you recommend a brand of filter? Sally, do you recommend a particular brand?
I don't have one on the. I mean, at the moment, I think probably Systema is the best one. The Systema, is it Systema?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, wait.
Yeah.
That's the plastic I like. I know this. Is it?
Is it Brita? Is that the one you're thinking of? Brita?
I'm thinking Brita. Yeah. I'm thinking the Brita Brita one.
Yeah.
That one's probably the best.
I actually have one here with me.
They do different things. Yeah. So they're great. They do different things. I know that it's really hard to come by a good water bottle. And so part of what I'm doing is actually creating my own brand of water bottle, because so many of them are bad plastics. So I'd really like to see everyone with a filtered water bottle, because they're so essential.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and actually just on that one, I did actually find one for those people who are interested. I actually found one it's cost me $40, but I saw this as an investment. It's glass, and it's got a filter. So if you can't access filtered water, but you have got your filtered bottle, you can pretty much rest assured that you're reducing your impact. So, but a lot of this stuff as well, guys. Remember that. I just saw another comment come through. Danielle says, so informative throughout the water bottles. Most water pipes are copper or poly. Not sure of the full name. Pick is in your downpipes and takes your. I'm not sure if that. I'm going to read that out. Pick is in your downpipes and takes your poo away. Possibly. Could be sewage. I'm gonna go with that one. Poo away.
Yeah,
I love it. Okay,
mm-hmm.
You must be either a plumber or married to one, Danielle. So thank you very much for PVC pipes. That's the one. Yep, awesome. Plumber's wife. Yeah, I guessed. I love it. So guys, Sally and I have got some work to do in terms of, we've got a little bit more research to do in terms of brands and giving you guys access to some of the best recommendations that we know of and that have gone through our scrutiny. So if you would like to learn more or have access to that, we would love you to join our first course. It's something new, and we'd love you to join us. So thank you everyone for your time. Thank you, Sally, for your incredible knowledge, your time, your patience, and dealing with me. So thank you once again. Everyone.
Not a problem. No, I've loved it. Thank you.
Well, we've got some great feedback coming through. Thank you to everyone for making the time to make this a priority. Have a great night. And for those of you who are watching on the recording, I hope you take excellent notes, and we will provide the link for you as well. So good night, everyone, and thank you again. Bye.
Bye.